Shirley, and welcome to the first episode of this thing. Notice that I don't have a name yet, but it's basically a channel, I would say, where I talk about the books that I like and how it relates to life. So this is the first episode, so it might be a bit scattered, so please be patient, okay? And I also have a cat who will be making special appearances because she just really has to be beside me. So there we go. Anyway, so today the first book that we're going to be talking about is this book. It is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. So let's get into it. Now, before we get into it, I want to talk about the reason why I'm doing this. I am obviously of the opinion that fiction is not just gotten from nowhere. Authors, they look at life and then they create stories out of it. So fiction is a very fictional stories. It's a very important part of life, and it allows us to see things or to understand things in our own lives. And so I decided to create this channel. So it's going to be basically like a book review meets a lifestyle or whatever podcast type of situation, but it's just basically my thing. And anyway, let's get into it. So like I said, we're starting with this Before I Let Go. My laptop is here because I do have a few questions and talking points there that I would like to talk about. So this book was I think it was an interesting book. Now, I'm not a person that reads a lot of romantic books, and this was definitely romance. But the good thing about this was it wasn't just romance, it was romance plus so many other themes. They talked about mental health and grief, they talked about family and community, they talked about friendships, parents, they talked about it's the book touched on a lot of things, and that was like the drawing point for me, because I was not going to read a book that was just romance. That is not my preferred genre. Anyway, so what the book is really about, this couple, Yasmin and Josiah. At this point, they had separated because something had happened in their family. So there's going to be a lot of spoilers, so I'm just going to keep on talking, right? So something had happened in their family. They Josiah had lost someone that was basically like a mom to him, and the family, that's Jasmine and Josiah, had lost a baby. It was a stillbirth, which was very, very sad. And they had two kids. Of course, they have their two kids, Deja, which is the first girl, and the second boy, who I cannot remember right now, Kazim. So they have the two kids, a boy and a girl. They live in a great neighborhood. Yeah, they're fairly okay. They're restaurant owners, so their family business is the restaurant and everything. And so this book basically talks about how they separated, Josiah and Yasmin. They separated. At the beginning of the book, they showed them separated, right? So, but they're obviously still co-parenting. Josiah basically even still lives down the street from them. There are still a lot of heavy feelings in this separation, but they separated because they felt that they were not who they had started out to be. So the book then takes us back to when they were younger, when they had just met, with all the promises and all the basically the hope of a young couple, but what happens when life actually happens? How does your love survive that, right? And I think that was basically what this book was trying to do, and it did a really good job. I will give it up to Kennedy Ryan here. There were some very cringy parts of the book because, well, it's a romantic book. I expected the cringe, but the other aspects of the book I loved. So I have a few questions here, so I'm just going to talk to myself and talk about the book. So it says, what was your immediate reaction to Yasmin and Josiah's relationship? And for me, like I said, so you meet them split, they are separated, but like they're co-parenting. Josiah is described as this very black, awesome, handsome man, and Yasmin is described as obviously a Black American woman. She's described as thick. She's described as I got shots from the description. I'm not sure how, but I got it. And anyway, it's a fit, but physically. And then what's the immediate reaction? My reaction was basically these two are just in love and they just don't know how to be okay with that. Like I said, my cat is going to make an appearance. Her name is Panther, and say hi to Panther. Hi Panther. Anyway, so and back to it, did I root for Yasmin and Josiah to get back together? So at some point in the book, Josiah was dating someone that worked for them in the restaurant, and Yasmin was dating someone else. And I think that was the part that pissed me off in the book, because that just reminds me of these people that are so clearly in love with each other, but they don't want to admit it to themselves or work on the relationship, but then they go out to date other people. Like, say you are the person that this person is dating. For example, you are the person that somebody like Josiah is dating. That was the part that really pissed me off about the book, because I was just like, okay, this is not okay. You guys are clearly in love with each other. I know there were a lot of, oh, I don't know, and all of that, but I just felt like they could have worked it out, I guess, without involving other people, especially Josiah. But I would say that they were very clear with the people that they were dating, that see, this is this other person, and this other person is a very heavy presence in my life. I have kids with this person, all of that. We're still a family, but we're separated, and it was up to those people that they dated to make the decision to continue, I guess. But it just hits me the wrong way, because even there was a point in the book when they were having like a Thanksgiving dinner, and Yasmin's mom had made a statement that she was like, because they had invited the girl that Josiah was dating also to the party, to the gathering, and Yasmin's mom, after talking to the girl and whatever, went to meet Josiah to be like, stop wasting this girl's time. That is a beautiful girl. Leave her alone and face your wife. Because she was just like, you guys are wasting your time and everybody else's time. You all need to fix yourself. And that's the part, that is the dating other people. That's the part of the book that I really did not like. So moving on. So we're talking about, so let's get into Yasmin and Josiah's relationship. So when they had the stillbirth, so that very difficult part of their family, Yasmin basically fell into a very deep depression rather. She had that day, what happened was Josiah was out of town and she had gone to close up the restaurant and she fell, and obviously she went to the hospital after, and then the baby was no longer breathing, because the point when she fell, the baby lost access to oxygen. And so she Yasmin really felt that it was her fault. She became a totally different person, and she felt like her life was not her own again, and she felt really choked. So she just had to come out of the marriage, come out of the relationship, and come out of everything. Now, do I think that space was necessary? I think it was necessary. I think it was very much necessary, because during when I was reading that part, it was kind of like I could feel her distress. Like, she felt so choked. She felt like it was just too much. Like, she can handle her kids, they have routines, they have this, they have that, but she could not handle the look of Josiah, the expectation, I would say, the look. Why are you looking at me like that? What do you expect from me? Do you expect me to break down? Do you expect me to be strong? What do you need? That kind of thing. She could not stand that. And so I guess space, when you don't feel like yourself anymore in a relationship, is obviously necessary. And obviously, so the book, at the beginning of the book, Josiah was very much against therapy, right? He was like, he's not going to go to therapy, therapists don't help or whatever. But as the book progressed, you could see that he ended up going because his son actually needed, and he wanted to set a good example. But he ended up even loving therapy because his therapist was quite good and was telling him, I was giving him a different perspective. And I think that that's the thing about therapists, at least for those of us that do not struggle with severe mental issues. It's just, therapists are good because they, like I said, they kind of give you a different perspective on what is going on, because sometimes we're just stuck in a black and white thinking, or in a very parallel thinking, a way of thinking rather. And our therapist can be like, okay, how about you look at it in so and so way, right? And and so I think that they are very important. And for Josiah, it allowed him to be able to communicate better. And that's another thing about therapists, right? They would give you the tools. And this is just basically me just advocating for therapy right now. I say this because I am currently seeing an amazing one, and she has really been helpful for me. And so they would give you the tools and everything. And this book also allowed me to see what grief was inside a family. So growing up, I lost my baby brother when I was younger, and in that sense, I kind of know what grief in a family is, and how it changes the relationship a man has, partners have. A man has the wife, and the wife for him, and also with other kids, and even the kids with each other, right? And in this case, the book, the kids had not even met the baby, so it was even less of, there was hope there, but there was no, it was just we wish the baby could come. They had not actually met the baby, so to an extent it might have been easier, I guess, even for the family, right? It is a little bit easier. But I say that because I lost my baby brother, and it was, grief inside a family is so, it has to be handled very delicately, because a lot of blaming goes on in that. And I really, really love the way this book treated it, because there was no part of the book where Josiah blamed his wife Yasmin for falling down or whatever. There was a point where she had said, oh, why did you have to travel, or something funny like that, but blame will come out. Blame when there is grief, blame after a loss is, especially after a loss of a child, is very, it has to come out, and it has to also be treated very delicately. If not, it will lead to chaos in the family. And so I truly like the way they dealt with it. And another huge part of this book that I loved is community, is Yasmin's community, Yasmin's friend. So throughout the book, we meet Yasmin's two friends, Soledad, and I'm also very terrible with names, so even I literally just finished reading this book and I cannot remember the names. Sorry about that. But anyway, we meet her two friends, Soledad and, let's call the second one West, because Soledad from Westlife, so I'm sorry. Anyway, Soledad and West, two black women, we meet them, and they held this girl, they held Yasmin, they held her physically, they grounded her, they held space for her. And this part of the book basically spoke to me. Every scene with his friends spoke to me, because I am also not a person that has been very lucky with friends, with female friends. Maybe it's in the way that I communicate or don't communicate, and it has allowed me to not grow and nourish a lot of friendships. But seeing this book and seeing that Yasmin met these women after she lost the baby, right? When she was going through this horrible part of her life, she met them in group therapy or something, and they basically became so reliable, a support system. They became everything. Of course, the book mentioned that she had friends before, but the book was really about post this thing, right? And I loved it because for so long I had been feeling like the time to meet my community had passed, and I was just going to do life on my own, right? And which is actually a very sad, and not just sad, but quite a scary thought. But reading this, I'm just like, situations will draw people together. It might not be a great situation, and it might also be a great situation. You will find your people. Obviously we don't wish this kind of situation to ourselves, like grief or death, but what I'm saying is life in life you will find your community one way or the other, right? So basically it's never too late. She, Yasmin, found hers at 35, and yes, I know this is a novel, but it's never really too late to find the people that will hold you and will stand by you, and you will do the same for them. I mean, if I have gotten to a point where I can clearly say that I am definitely way better than I was in the way that I communicate, in the way that I act, in the way that I hold space for people. I'm definitely way better than I was a few years ago. So yeah. So basically, they made me see that there is hope. And if you're out there, if you're listening, and your female friendships are a little bit too square and it's just weird, there is hope for a better for community. You know, there is hope for closeness. And also one thing also about the book also was the relationship that the parents, Yasmin and Josiah, had with their kids. Now there was Deja and then there was Kazim, and the way they held the children and through the breakup, through the different phases of the relationship. And there was a part in the book where the child, one of the kids, Deja, that's a senior girl, had basically walked in on the mom and the dad making out, and the parents had not yet told the kids that they were getting back together or that they were seeing each other again. But it was just one of those gray areas where they were in the middle of them making it official again and just playing around. Anyway, the girl caught them, and I really liked the way Josiah handled it. And they were like, and he was like, this is a relationship between me and your mom. We will let you know when we feel like information needs to be given to you, but you are loved regardless, you are okay regardless. This part is not your business. There was such a clear boundary, and I think that was so beautiful to see, because I have never understood people that say, oh, divorce will affect the kids or whatever. Obviously it will when it is handled carelessly. If the kids are the focus, if the kids are the priority, I don't see how a romantic relationship ending is affecting your parental relationship with your child. I don't get. The father is still the dad, the mom is still the dad, co-parenting decisions are still being made together. So why is one affecting the other? It only affects if the relationship between parents and kid was as a result of the romantic relationship you had. That is, it was based on that. As in, if there is no more romance, then there is no more parental love or there is no more parental care. That's when it will affect. But if there are clearly stated boundaries that the relationship the parents have is not, at least the romantic side, is not your business, dear child. That's not your part of it. So I really loved that the way they handled that whole, there was just such a clear demarcation. And that's why I love books, because it kind of teaches you that if something happens and whatever relationship you are in and you end up in a divorce, look at how you handle this. You are no longer in love with your partner, great. You are no longer loving them or whatever. Or if something negative happens, say somebody cheated, now you hate them or you really dislike them. You must hold that hate and hold that part and hold that dislike for them. Hold it in one corner. But I'm not saying stay together, obviously, but let your relationship with your kids not be affected. And I think that's one thing that they really did a good job of in this book. So we are almost done. So basically, so those are the themes in the book. Those are the major themes. We talked about the kids. We've talked about the different friendships. We've talked about the therapist and mental health. We've talked about the two main characters, Josiah and Yasmin. This video, this explanation is not even doing this book justice. I am going to need you to do more and go and look and read this book, because it is really a good book. Now, at least for the other things that is not romance, for those of us that we don't like romantic books, yeah, this wasn't bad. Now, a bigger question that I found online is, can love survive something that fundamentally changes both people? So can love survive grief? Something like that. Can love survive a big change? Can love survive this, can love survive an accident? Can love survive can love survive big life things? Can it? Personally, I don't know. I have never been in love, so I don't know. But I would hope so. I mean, if a person tells you they are in love with you, I would hope that they are in love with you regardless of what happens to you, regardless of the change in the circumstance. I'm in love with you when you are buying me a lot of things. Also means I'm in love with you when you're broke, right? And so love should be able to survive it, but does it? Obviously, life happens, and love doesn't always survive big things. But in a perfect world, it definitely should. Another question: is forgiveness something you give another person or something you give yourself? Is forgiveness something you give another person or something you give yourself? I think a big part of forgiveness is for you. Like, even when it's even when it's for another person, like even when you're forgiving somebody else, you have to kind of forgive yourself for being the person that accepted that. So I think it is first of all something you give yourself. For example, if a person says, or if a person cheats on you, for example, okay, I don't believe in forgiving cheating, so I don't know about that. So let's move on to something else. If a person, I think, does something to you that was harmful to you, and you want to, I think you first of all have to forgive yourself for being, like I said, being the person that accepted that, being the person that was in that situation, right? Because there are so many times that you blame yourself, and you're like, if I wasn't in so and so situation, or if I wasn't there, you would not have said this, or you would not have done this to me. And that's kind of like you're kind of blaming and angry with yourself. So a big part of forgiveness is forgiving that part, and then forgiving the thing that was done to you, and then just actively trying to let it go. I don't like that whole forgive and forget, because you do not have amnesia. Your brain would not automatically forget what was done. Somebody like me, I kind of have to dwell a little bit because I have ADHD. So, well, not an official diagnosis, but I do be seeing the traits. So I kind of have to dwell a little bit on said thing, and before I move on, right? I have to fixate a bit. I have to ruminate a bit before I move on. So so I won't just forget. So that space is really needed when I'm ruminating, when I'm in that zone. But yeah, basically forgiveness starts with yourself before you can give it to another person. And can you truly rebuild a relationship without becoming different people first? That's for the people in relationships. Okay, I'm joking. But rebuild, I mean, you kind of, if something bad has happened and you guys have separated or whatever, and now you guys are finding yourself back, like this book, they have to kind of, I would say, like, okay, this book, what I was going to say was they had to kind of date themselves, but they didn't really date themselves. It was much more organic. It was more, they didn't have to date themselves because they were still very much in each other's lives. They were still, it's not as if there was a drastic change. They just needed to get together. But to answer the question without referencing the book, can you truly rebuild a relationship without becoming different people first? I mean, if we're rebuilding, then I guess becoming different people, yes, because if your relationship ended, that means the old version didn't work, right? The old version with the old version of you didn't work. So yeah, for this new relationship to happen, you have to become a different person. So Last question. What does the book suggest about the difference between loving someone and being healthy enough to love them well? That's a very good question. And I think that's a great question to end it with, because what does the book suggest about the difference between loving someone and being healthy enough to love them well? I don't think there's a difference between loving someone and being healthy enough to love them well. I think if you are not healthy enough to love a person well, then you are not loving that person. What you're doing is not love. It might be obsession, it might be going out of your way to really please them. But if you're not healthy enough, if you are just taking from yourself and there is no, what you're doing is not love. If you're just giving to this other person, you're just bombarding them with love, there is no boundary. You are giving love as a result of you being lonely. That's not love. So for you to even show love, for you to even love someone, I think you have to be healthy enough to love them well. And that's why I personally say I don't think I've ever been in love, because I've had romantic connections with people, but I don't think I've ever been in that space where I am loving a person out of love, as in I'm just loving this person. It's either there are no more boundaries, so I'm just giving and giving, and obviously that is detrimental to me, or it's either I'm coming from a place of I don't feel good about myself, or I'm a little bit lonely, so let me just just go with the flow or whatever. But loving someone and being healthy enough to love them well, I don't think they are different, because, and now I'm just repeating myself, because you have to be healthy to love. That's literally what it is. Bell Hooks described it as love as, I can't remember the full definition, but basically something that you are given and you want to see this other person flourish, right? And obviously they are doing the same for you. So you kind of have to be healthy enough to do all of that. Maybe I pulled out the Bell Hooks explanation and it didn't really land well the way I thought it would, but I think my point, I have been able to make it, because I'm just saying that there is really no difference. And yeah, so that's where I'm going to end it today, that there is no difference between loving someone and being healthy enough to love them well. Because again, if you are loving someone from a place of desperation, which obviously is not healthy, from a place of all these things, you're not loving the person, you're obsessing about the person, you're not even giving the person a breathing space anymore, so there is no difference. Anyway, thank you if you've gotten to this point. Wow, you are a champ. But I want to be doing this like every week. I don't know yet if I'm going to share it with people. It's just going to be something on YouTube, something I do for myself and for the books that I have read. So yeah, thank you for listening. And this is, I think I'm going to make it, or rather call it fiction and reality, or reality and fiction, or something like that. But regardless of what it's called, I will see you next week. Bye bye. Oh, by the way, really read this, okay? Bye.